Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a cold morning in Angeles Forest. 36 degrees when we got up here. A little warmer now, but it doesn't matter because today is seriously a bucket list day, a meet your heroes day. Terminator. Mustang Cobra Terminator. I have wanted to drive one of these ever since one of the first YouTube videos I can ever remember watching was a black Terminator modified doing a second gear burnout from a stop. And you could just hear the whine, everything, and it was one of the earliest videos I can remember watching. It's okay, and it's seared in my memory. And these cars just became a great example of potential that's left on the table. You know, the engine's overbuilt, modified easily, build power easily. So I'm stoked that Richard emailed me to come out and bring us and let me drive it.
It's
Dale. Damn it, because you got two first names. And in my brain before I said, I'm like, it was met you an hour ago. Dale, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
So sorry that I called you by your last. I was just trying to be formal. Really.
It's fine.
It's like in Iceland, your last name becomes your first name. So your name will be like Richardson Richard. Anyway, tell us about your car before we go screaming off into the distance.
Okay, so the car is a basic bolt-ons car. Intake, 2.7 pulley, exhaust, full exhaust, Mag 8 off-road H-pipe, MagnaFlow exhaust, the quiet exhaust, it's not really that quiet, and it has H&R race springs. The car runs Toyo R888Rs in the back because of the spin and the power. It also runs Maximum Motorsports caster camber plates. Pretty much a basic bolt-ons car, something that pretty much everybody did when they first got these cars back in the day. Real cheap, it's like $1,200 worth of power mods. Car makes $480, $515.
I mean, that's why these became like the cult legend icon they were, because like this was early 2000s. Power was still expensive in most things. Turbos weren't in everything, and this was something you could just put, like you said, $1,200 of power mods on, and you've jumped up more than 100 horsepower.
Yeah,
these came with 390 crank horsepower and torque, and you're at
my car
did
it made more than that when it was on the stock tune. It made 370 wheel.
Wow.
370 wheel and like 365 torque when I had put it on just a regular old Dynojet dyno.
An overbuilt.
Yeah, a lot of them come that way. There's a couple people you'll see that there was one, my tuner actually had one that came across and made 401 and 390, and it was completely bone stock.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I love it. I love when, they're still doing it, like Audi today, oh, all right, RS7 makes 600 horsepower, and you're like, it made 720 at the wheels. They're like, oh, weird. All right, let's go see what it's about. Traction control is off, as you can tell. Hits a second here. Can't see nothing. All right. It's real quiet. Okay, that's a sound. That's an amazing sound. I mean, it's coming like right from the exhaust through the non-back seat. So this is a great day for this car to show up, because another car that showed up today was a 2018 Mustang GT with performance pack. And that car, $31,000 base. I think he got his for 35 MSRP, and this was 33 grand when they came out. So now with inflation, this would be more like 44. So this would be if you got a GT with performance pack 2 and like all the interior mods or all the interior accoutrement. Now you're about the same price. And then what's funny is, that car comes with 460 horsepower, and this allegedly came with 390. So there's a lot of similarities in like price. The weight is basically the same, of 3,600, 3,500 pounds. You've taken 300 out of it.
Yeah.
This car does feel lighter than his did. I mean, it's physically this car is smaller, but it does feel lighter. I will say that the steering feel and speed in his car is significantly better. Really not a talkative steering wheel. I'm actually very surprised.
Yeah. Considering it's considered one of the best racks other than the Cobra R rack, the SN95s didn't have crazy great steering feel. It's not like an on-off. It's more due to the fact of the steering shaft. It's not a solid steering shaft. It has a rack joint in it. It's kind of made to deaden the steering. It's unfortunate, but
Well, it's the cards you dealt. I mean, like you were telling me before, a lot of people that are modifying like a Fox body, they seek out the Cobra rack. They're like, dude, the Cobra rack's the one to get. And you're like, yes, but it doesn't mean it's magic. Like, it's the best, it's the best with what you're offered. I know that the best rack for most BMWs of like the 90s is the 2.7 rack from the Z3. And it's from the cheap Z3. And it's like, sometimes manufacturers, they were just figuring things out. Manufacturing was different, hardware was different, and you make do with what you can. Yeah. So yeah, it might be the best. It's the best rack available for Mustangs, unless you can find that Cobra R rack, which maybe, like you said, that's a unicorn. How are you going to even find that thing? Oh, the sound though. It sounds like someone's dropping boulders on a giant steel drum, just like bow, 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 bow. Brake pedal feels nice. It grabs up top. Yeah, it's got really good pedal feel. A little better than that 2018. You said you had, what, Hawk HFP pads?
The HP Plus pads.
HP Plus pads? I mean, the cornering balance is nice.
Considering this car has so much weight on the front.
Right.
This car is extremely, well, not extremely.
It's 56, 44, right?
Yeah, they're really nose heavy.
Heavy car, which sort of the new one felt a little nose heavy too, not as much. They've dialed that out a bit, but your turn-in speed feels nice, and the front grip feels nice. Based on, like you said, you have a more aggressive camber and a little more caster, right?
So I run closer to the track spec, what people consider the track spec or race spec version of the adjustments for the front.
I'll say you probably need to talk louder because I'm watching the level and it's like it's reading all exhaust right now.
Yeah.
So sorry. I'm sorry, folks. Like it's a super loud car.
It's all that freedom,
It's, exactly. We are just shouting freedom around the canyons right now. You know what? The power band, I guess, it's why I like superchargers. It's linear. It's pretty smooth. It's thunderous, but it's just like a real steady increase of power instead of turbos where you get like a whack. And then the front grip sticks nicely.
So in this car, when I had it tuned, I wasn't chasing a dyno number, obviously. I just went to get it tuned to make sure the car wasn't going to blow up when I went into boost. The crazy part about it is at 2500, right when you stab the throttle and do dyno pulls, the torque went straight up. It was almost like a wall.
I believe that. These are a good example of the overbuilt things that Ford has gifted the world. The Lightning was before it. That was like the iron block, but not as good. This is also an iron block, different block, but they went forged internals. And as we know from things like the 2JZ and the 4GT engine, forged internals are great. It basically just gives you a lot of potential. Doesn't feel bananas fast, which I'm really happy about.
If you put it in second, it's bananas fast.
This is going to be real loud. Oh yeah, that's wheel spin. Yeah, so it was like a wheel spin through the tunnel.
Yeah.
But it was, you know what? It didn't like move around. It just felt like a little bit of like a little skipping.
This car, when I was on the dyno, he actually decided, screw it, I'm going to do a second gear pull and spun on the dyno on our 888Rs.
That sound is addictive, man. So Anthony, the owner of the 2018, said his car wasn't loud enough, and I was like, you're crazy. It doesn't need to be loud enough. Now I understand what he meant. That is, I feel like what movie did I just watch? I think it was Black Panther, where the opening, the guy's got like the giant elephants that are destroying everything. No, that was King Arthur. This feels like an elephant that's 8 stories tall and is just like, I'm the most powerful being on the planet right now. Give me some bananas. Dude, the stick is really impressive. I was reading up on reading reviews of this car to do my homework, and they were talking about how compared to previous Mustangs, with obviously like the R as an exception, This is a much more track-ready car. Instead of just stepping out in the back kind of uncontrollably or wallowing in the front, it was much more open to like a four-wheel slide, and it feels really even. I mean, obviously the IRS has a lot to do with that. If this was a live axle, it would be a little bit of a different ballgame, because my most notable experience in a supercharged Mustang was like 2012 Shelby GT500, and that had traction control, which was like, I'm pretty sure it was just a light hooked up to like a loose switch, because you would just, you'd hit the gas and the light would flash and you just roast tires, and you're like, what are you actually doing? And the tractor goes like, oh, I'm on brake. Yeah. Like, I'm actually not working right now. If you come back between the hours of 9 and 5, maybe I'll get to you.
That's the complete opposite of what this car was, where traction control just shut you down.
Yeah,
hard.
That's all they had.
In its face.
You can just feel and hear the tires going.
Yeah, this car is notorious for wheel hop. It's not doing it now, but if you try to dump the clutch at first and try to get it going, you can just destroy the IRS. The IRS, the differentials in these cars were kind of made of glass.
Oh, that's not good.
Especially the actual diff covers. Diff covers, end of story. That's it. It's done.
But I am really impressed with how this chassis feels right now, dude. Like, I mean, that thing was, because it's almost like, because the steering feel is so like muted, that I'm not expecting the tires to turn in as quickly as they are, because I can't really, so like from my fingers are going, yeah, we don't have the grip yet, and the tire just, the front end moves.
Yeah, it just goes.
Really cool.
It's kind of unusual for some people. Oh, such freedom.
So if they, you know, because you said you still have like some cooling issues with this car, is there a way that someone could take one of these and like really beef up like radiator and airflow and oil coolers and run this as like a road course car, or would it just cook?
Okay, so I don't have cooling as temperature. Oh, good.
We're gonna have to. We'll be right back after these sponsored messages. There's no way the microphone didn't just blow out doing that. If you recorded that sound, you could sell it to Peter Jackson, and the next time he makes a movie that needs to have like a monster in a cave, that's what they would play.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe how composed this feels. Brake pedal feels like it's having a little bit of fade now, so I'll calm down a little bit.
Yeah. It just comes down to they're only 2 piston calipers. The car is not heavy, but
that's amazing.
That's going to be the next thing that I'm going to do is brakes. The end goal with this is going to be open tracking, like what we're talking about.
So let me go to 4 so we can hopefully hear you. So yeah. So your goal is open tracking.
Yeah. So what it is there is a guy who does a lot of open tracking on it. It's not a big like group of Terminator guys that do that. They don't really like doing that. It's maybe a few guys who autocross. What he has to do for an intercooler is he has to run a VW Rabbit radiator as a heat exchanger.
Hilarious. Oh, as a heat exchanger.
As a heat exchanger. I already run a 3-row, 3-core like aluminum radiator, so my cooling's not bad. We're sitting here, we're meeting on it. It's only got to 194. This car runs 180 to 194 all day long. Even with the heater on or off.
That could be a t-shirt. It's like, your radiator is my oil cooler. That is amazing. The size, I mean, nowadays, like, the new ZL1, it's got 10 heat exchangers.
Yeah.
So imagine you're trying to loosely apply like the same formula of power, supercharged V8, but it's 16 years ago. Before that, maybe they could afford that. Maybe we didn't have the materials to make heat exchangers that small. There's a lot of things that go into it. I think it's easy for us to go, why didn't they do X with this car back then?
Yeah.
And it may be the case of, hey, aluminum manufacturing may not have been up there, or plastics manufacturing. Like my car, when it came out, the water pump is known for exploding, or the propeller, because the plastic is plastic.
Yeah.
So companies started making metal impellers, which were better, but they would get out of balance when the metal would wear.
Yeah.
Now the aftermarket solution is plastic again, but it's modern plastic technology. You have CRFP panels, you have all that stuff. So if you look at this car and you're like, how come they didn't have the heat game figured out? Maybe they didn't have the ability to.
Maybe they weren't thinking of people putting smaller, crazier pulleys on these cars, throwing a boost from 8 from stock to 15 like I have.
If they weren't then that's very short-sighted, because I feel like by this point, you know your market. Your Mustang market's a mod-friendly market. I feel like they expected people to do that. What's great is you were saying that because they had to build this in such short time, kind of like the Ford GT, that may be why it's so overbuilt.
Yeah. It's also because Ford decided they were going to just, they kept blowing motors up on the dyno left, right. I think they said somewhere around 300 motors blew up on the dyno in probably like 2-3 months. So they had to put the heaviest block because that's what lasted. They had to put 1,000 horsepower rated crank. They had to put on, you know, the manly rods. The manly rods, this engine can last to like 900 to 1,000 horsepower. People have done it before.
That's amazing.
700 to 800 is pretty common on these cars. People throw like a 2.3, either a Whipple or a 2.2 Kenny Bell or a 2.3 TDS.
That's,
and
that's
they'll just go
crazy.
make crazy power. And the cars will just not skip a beat. 2.3 blowers on this car, it's perfect. Technically, it's half the displacement of the motor because it's a 4.6, but
that's amazing.
They're just great fucking blowers.
That's amazing. Oops, I just see I was so distracted by your very good story. Wow, that guy's moving. Sometimes the locals here drive cars faster than some people would drive sports cars. It's pretty amazing.
I'm surprised I see some people whipping like Camrys and stuff.
I saw a garbage truck this morning coming up here that was going faster than a Prius that let me by. Man, there's something to the Ford firing order, like it almost, I guess the only way I can describe it, it's as if there are seconds between each explosion, because it's like you really hear each individual cylinder. It's like bam, 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 bam. You know, and a tighter, like LS engines sound a little bit tighter. It's a little bit more of a constant sound, but this is like, you can always tell when there's a Mustang coming. You can always tell when there's like a Cobra coming. This would be such a fun track experiment because, I mean, the straight line power would be bananas. People wouldn't expect it, which I think would be the most fun, is it's not the common solution for what is my track vehicle going to be. And, man, I mean, I think this chassis feels awesome.
Like the other thing I'm going to do with this car is I'm going to switch up the entire front suspension. It's not going tubular. I'm actually going to go with a company called Briggs. It's going to be a short, long arm suspension.
Yeah.
It's going to match the rear. That's it's a pretty like well-known road race thing that these cars use for the Fox chassis.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. It's like $5,000 for that setup. But that'll completely change the car. And to get rid of the design that it's in the front, it's going to go test kit block. It'll lose the 85 pounds off of the nose from the block alone.
Wow.
The iron block is 160 pounds completely empty. The test kit block, which is a stronger, better block, only weighs 85 pounds.
Whoa. All right. Well, when you do all that, bring it back, because that's going to make it a whole different beast. Because like Griggs is one of, you know, the biggest names in road course campaigns for Mustangs and Fox bodies. I think they're based up in Sonoma, and I've read about, you know, the SLA solutions, the short long arm. I know Cortex Racing does it as well, and that's going to be, it's, you know, when you put the right amount of like engineering and smarts into basically anything, you can make it do anything. But this is just such a fun platform. I'm sure there's a lot of like nostalgia, you know, youth in my brain that's making me just support this project. I mean, there's a lot of that, because that's awesome. These guys are all waiting just to hear this, and then they're going to go home. Oh, and there's cut.
That was my two-step.
Oh, the two-step.
Yeah, you were holding your foot on the thing as you went into it, so you kind of have to rest your foot off of it.
Oh, on the clutch?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just hovering a bit?
Yeah, just a little bit. It's weird because the clutch sensors in these are kind of weird. They don't really have it's either on-off. That's all it reads.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
You know. Well, it's from 04, like, you know, traction control is on-off. Like, the only thing in here with nuance is like the air conditioning.
Yeah. The air conditioning, and one time when I had the original seats, they had the original driver's seat was really cool. It had adjustable bolsters.
Oh, that's very nice.
It had a little air pump in it, and you hit a little switch, and it'd grab you tighter.
Yeah, hold you tighter.
The problem with it was the driver's seat was 118 pounds.
That's really heavy. My car has that. Now I'm worried about how much it weighs.
So with me, this car actually has like a personal thing with it. It has a personal. It's like a living memory for me of my mom who passed away of cancer when I was 13. I actually got a little model car. It's one of those things that kind of happens nowadays.
Yeah.
Cancer, it really sucks, but that's that's why I want to build this car. I'm never getting rid of this car. This car is going to be a tribute basically to her. After me getting that model, I kept it for so many years. I love that car. That was what got me into Mustangs. Besides my dad, building his first car as a 66 Mustang. So this car is always just, it's never going anywhere from me. When I get in this car, it makes me feel happy no matter what. When it goes down, if something goes wrong with it, knock on wood, something goes wrong, I feel terrible about it. Because it's kind of like my child or something it's breaking. It kind of hurts me.
Well, I'm real glad you let me drive without traction control onto the desert by a bunch of hard rocks, man.
You gotta release the freedom,
No, that's true. I think it's, some people go to the way if they want to lease a new car every 2 years, and it's hard. I'm like this. I think we're all like this, where you want to experience as many cars as you can because we love cars. But also, if you have something like this that you love and it's got a connection to it and a history, you're like, oh, but I don't want to get rid of this thing. So I think it's really awesome if you can make the car evolve to what you want to do, rather than going, I need to buy a new solution. I need to buy a new track car. It's or just take what you have and make it into one. Yeah. This will be rowdy and awesome, especially with that Greg stuff.
It's going to be 700 horsepower, 2.3 TVS, higher compression. It's going to be making 700. And it's going to be going around a track.
And it's going around a track.
Yeah, it's going to go around the track.
Awesome.
I don't care if it slides around the corners. It'll slide. Oh,
that's a good thing.
That's even better.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Track might not like me. Who cares? I'll have fun the whole time doing it. I'll be
the only time the track gets mad at you is if you're intentionally sliding every corner and they're like, this isn't a drift day.
Yeah,
and then you just go to drift day.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much, Dale. I got it. No for bringing it. This is seriously it's been on my mind since I saw that video. Ever since I read about him. And it's such a cool experiment for Ford. Probably made a lot of the Cobra R people mad because these were $20,000 cheaper when they came out. Wait, they have 100 more horsepower and it was 20 grand less? Excuse me, I have a question. No more question. Yeah. But thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, listening to the podcast, everything. Keep watching the one takes, subscribe to the podcast, and we will see you next time. This is awesome. Thanks.
Yes, sir.